Idaho. So we used to go and have canyon parties in the desert every weekend. We would find crazy obscure spots, so there was no way the police could find us. The place we were at this week was called the Planetarium because it was up on a plateau, so you could see all the stars go all the way around to the ground. The 360-degree Idaho is extremely mountainous, so this is incredibly rare. Usually, you'd only see the small upper section of the stars. I always had trouble staying asleep the next morning after drinking. Still do. I would get maybe 2 to 3 hours of sleep, then be wide awake. While of course everyone else is sleeping off their hangover, I would be wide awake by 5 a.m. cooking breakfast. I want to mention at this point, there's an Air Force base, a mountain home Air Force base, maybe 100 miles as the crows fly to the west of the planetarium. It may or may not be relevant, but I'll leave that for you to decide. So I went to bed that night we partied at the planetarium, around 2 a.m. probably, and I woke up just as you could see the light changing from the dark of night to the light blue of morning. I'd never seen the sunrise from such an angle where I had the high ground. Usually, by the time I see the sun peak in the mountains, it's already been light out for over an hour. I decided I wanted to take this opportunity to see what it's like to watch the night turn to day, from total darkness to daylight, while being able to observe the sun crest on the actual horizon. I grabbed a pack of cigarettes and a beer, and went and found a nice comfortable rock I could sit on, facing east. It was by far the most amazing sunrise I'd ever seen. I was able to watch all the subtle changes in colors, second to second, within the sky, the landscape, and the rocks and plants around me. The colors were literally moving in layers, quick and fleeting layers, one after another, to the point where my brain was almost unable to keep up with the speed it was all coming at me. I sat there for, I'm not sure how long, maybe at least an hour, possibly 2, as the sky and landscape around me went from starry and inky black to full daylight. Indescribable. I was elated, just smiling ear to ear with what I'd just witnessed, and it was just for me. No one else had been on that spot on this planet on that morning and had witnessed what I had alone. The sun was now high enough in the sky, and I realized that the transition was over. I was taking my last couple of drags of my last cigarette before I was going to get up and turn around to cook breakfast. Right as I thought, I heard what sounded like a giant bird flapping its wings to take off. You know the sound I'm talking about, but this was loud, right behind me, and startled me beyond belief. My fight or flight instinct kicked in, and my brain considered the fact that an eagle thought I was prey. I turned to see what looked like a 7 to 8 foot bird taking off behind me. I say bird with a question mark because, to be honest, what it looked like was a man with a mask on. It made him look like he had the beak of a parrot or toucan or a jungle bird and a bird suit. It was multicolor, iridescent, and very convincing as a bird. The same with his wings and feathers and everything. Everything about it was just a bird, other than the fact he was a man-shaped and 2 feet taller than me. It was as if this thing had read my mind, realizing I was about to stand up and turn around, and he, or it, was startled by the fact that if I turned around right then, I would see him. I heard those wings flutter and flap, turned around, and saw this thing for a split second as it spread its wings. The wingspan was at least 20 to 25 feet, and it flapped its wings once with so much force, it propelled into the sky at a rate faster than a fighter jet. It almost made absolutely no sound. I saw it, way up there in the sky, and it made its way so incredibly far with one flap of its wings that it was up amongst the clouds. He stopped there for just a moment before he spread those immense wings once more, and when he flapped them that second time, he was gone to the south. I don't know how to explain what I felt exactly in that moment. I wasn't on any drugs other than a breakfast Budweiser and nicotine, and I knew what I'd just seen. I wasn't in shock. I wasn't even stunned really. I was just in awe of what I'd witnessed. There was no way it was a trick of the eye or a trick of the mind or any of that. I guess I just had no frame of reference in my life experience files to compare this to. I knew what I'd seen was real, and I knew there was nothing in this world that is real that it could have been. Back then, I thought for sure it was an alien, a god to the ancients, a thunderbird to the natives. Today, I wonder if it may have been some sort of suit, some sort of technology. Who's to say these things are not one and the same? The thing I think about most these days, when I think of this story at least, is how long he'd been there, maybe 6 feet behind me. Was he watching the sunrise with me? Watching the sunrise? Maybe he was enjoying how much I was enjoying the sunrise. If it was there to take me as prey, it very much could have done that. That's not why he was there. He didn't act like a predator when I saw him. He acted caught, like I was never supposed to see him. I have many stories from the deserts of Idaho. Idaho is one of the largest and most sparsely populated states, with vast experiences and expanses of terrain for anything to hide in. I spoke of Idaho National Laboratory earlier. This huge facility in the desert near Arco is so incredibly secretive about what they do. They say it's a matter of national security. I do know for sure the security there is just as bad as Area 51, because a buddy of mine who's a paraglider got caught in some massive thermals, accidentally landing on their property. He was properly escorted to the highway by a pair of security guards in a military Humvee. Whatever it was, I just know that it was otherworldly. Mountain encounter. I'm a 23-year-old woman from Canada. I won't give away exactly where I live, of course, but I'll try and describe the kind of area I live in. To start off, I'm self-employed and I have to travel often to make my living. I've seen plenty of odd things, but this one still puts me on edge. When I was 21, I was traveling with my mom back home from an event called a powwow, where I sell crafted items I make. If you're Aboriginal like me, then you know what I'm talking about. To get home from the powwow, we had to go over a high mountain highway. This means there's not very many towns, gas stations, or other forms of civilization till you reach the other side. We were close to the top of the mountain, and I wasn't driving, so I started listening to music. I wasn't tired or wired on coffee like I normally am, and I don't do drugs or drink if I'm at a powwow, so I was pretty alert and awake. As I was looking into space, my eye caught on something in front of us on the side of the road, behind a tall fence meant to keep deer and moose off the highway. It was a white object, which was odd, and I honestly thought someone must have lost a tarp off their truck. But as we were coming closer to it, I could see it had legs, arms, and a head. I'm getting a bad chill up my back just thinking about it now. I felt my heart drop like a weight when I saw it raise its arms to the top of the fence where its head would probably be, about a foot or two above. Imagine how tall it would be compared to about a 6-foot or maybe even higher fence meant for deer. It raised its arms and placed its hands on the top of the fence, peering over, as if it was trying to understand how to get to the other side. I think I actually stopped breathing for a moment as we were driving past it, and I didn't dare look away from it. It took me maybe a moment to barely sputter to my mom to go faster. She didn't understand at first why I was suddenly freaking out and barely speaking English. She probably thought I was having a mental breakdown. She almost pulled over when I felt her braking and slowing down. I went into fight or flight mode and literally snapped back into reality and screamed at her on the top of my lungs. "Don't slow down. Go!" I probably continued to swear and nearly cry for about 15 to 20 more minutes. As soon as we got to the next town, we stopped at the first gas station, where I had my panic and asthma attack. Eventually, I told her why I screamed and freaked out at her. It was tall, skinny, no hair as far as I could see, unnaturally long arms and neck. It looked like it had small dark eyes, and I couldn't see if it had a mouth from that distance because it was probably shut. But imagine a naked slender man with beady eyes. That's the best way I can describe it. My mom looked horrified from the way I was describing it to her. And I'm not the kind of person to joke around with things like that. I don't mess around with paranormal things, as I've witnessed some stuff that would horrify most people. We ended up stopping at a friend's house to stay the night because we couldn't drive that extra hour home after that. I didn't even sleep. I was too scared and too worried that thing would find me. All night, all I could think about was a way to explain it to myself, like I was dreaming. Was it a tarp after all? Or maybe I was just straight up going insane. The more I tried to think of a way to debunk it, the more I realized it was real. And that's horrifying to think something like that exists out of video games and scary movies. Now I can't help but to look down to the floor between my feet and break in a cold sweat when we go past that area. I won't even drive it myself. I don't know if it was a skinwalker, ghost, or alien, but it felt like I saw something that wasn't meant to be there. I still have the occasional nightmare from it. I'm open to some advice to help me get my fear under control, or even a possible explanation on what that thing was that I saw. I think it could be helpful. UFO over Missouri. So, I saw something tonight in the sky that I can't wrap my head around. I was standing out in my driveway smoking a cigarette and talking to my girlfriend on the phone when I noticed 3 lights clustered in the sky, 2 red and 1 bright blue. I didn't think much about it at first because I live near an airport and just thought it was a plane or something. Then I realized it wasn't moving. I said something about it to my girlfriend, who cracked a joke about, if it's aliens, you're not allowed to get abducted while you're on the phone with me. Then, suddenly, the object moved in a very fast line for about 2 seconds. It paused, then raced off in another direction behind a tree line and out of view for a few seconds. After that, it zipped back into view and remained stationary for a few seconds. Maybe a minute then, it began rapidly moving about again, and then went back behind the tree line and didn't reappear. I have no idea what it was. A drone, maybe? I do live a few hours from an Air Force base, so maybe an experimental military craft? As much as I would love for it to be aliens, I'm skeptical and rational enough not to rush to that conclusion. What do you think?